There is something we all know, yet spend our entire lives pretending not to know. It sits at the edge of every conversation, lurks behind every plan we make, shadows every joy we experience. Death, the one truth that makes philosophers of us all and cowards of us all, often in the same breath. We live in a culture that has made death the ultimate taboo, more forbidden than any other topic. We speak of it in whispers, if at all. We sanitize it, hide it away in hospitals and funeral homes, as if by keeping it out of sight, we might somehow keep it out of mind. But death is not the opposite of life. It is the very condition that makes life possible. The silence that gives meaning to music, the darkness that defines light. Consider how strange this is. We are the only creatures on earth who know we are going to die, yet we are also the only ones who seem unable to accept this knowledge. A flower blooms and withers without anxiety about its ending. A wave rises and falls without grasping for permanence, yet we humans, blessed or cursed with consciousness, spend enormous energy denying what we cannot change. This denial is not merely a psychological quirk, it is the root of most of our suffering. We exhaust ourselves trying to build permanent structures on shifting sand, attempting to freeze the flowing river of existence into solid ice. We cling to youth, to relationships, to identities, to beliefs, as if our grip could somehow stop the inevitable flow of change. The fear of death is really the fear of change taken to its ultimate conclusion. Every day we experience countless small deaths, the death of this moment as it passes into the next, the death of who we were yesterday as we become who we are today. Our bodies are constantly dying and being reborn, every cell replaced, every thought arising and dissolving. We are like rivers, never the same water twice, yet we insist on calling ourselves by the same name. This insistence on permanence creates a fundamental contradiction in how we live. We make plans as if we were immortal, yet worry as if death might come at any moment. We accumulate possessions we cannot take with us, build reputations that will outlast us by mere decades, pursue achievements that time will eventually erase. There is nothing wrong with any of these activities. But when we do them from a place of denial about our mortality, they become sources of anxiety rather than joy. The irony is that the very thing we fear most, the ending of our individual existence, is what makes every moment precious. If we truly were immortal, would anything matter? Would love have its poignancy? Would beauty touch us so deeply? Would we feel the urgent sweetness of being alive? It is death that gives weight to our choices, death that makes each sunset potentially our last, death that infuses ordinary moments with extraordinary meaning. Yet we resist this gift. We prefer the illusion of control to the reality of flow, the false security of denial to the liberating acceptance of impermanence. We construct elaborate philosophies and belief systems to convince ourselves that somehow, some way, we are special, exempt from the law that governs all existence. What would it mean to live fully while knowing we must die? This is perhaps the most important question we can ask, yet it is the one we most vigorously avoid. The answer is not to become morbid or fatalistic, but to discover the profound freedom that comes from releasing our grip on what we cannot control. Think of holding water in your cupped hands. If you grasp too tightly, trying to prevent any drops from escaping, the water will squeeze through your fingers and be lost. But if you hold gently, accepting that some will flow away, you can enjoy the water while it is there. This is the art of living with death, not grasping so tightly that we squeeze the life out of life itself. This letting go is not a passive resignation, but an active embrace of reality as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. It is the recognition that change is not something that happens to us, but something we are. We are not separate from the process of life and death. We are that process, expressing itself temporarily in human form. When we truly understand this, something remarkable happens. The fear doesn't disappear entirely. That would be inhuman. but it transforms from paralyzing terror into natural awe. We begin to see death not as the enemy of life, but as life's most faithful companion, the bass note that gives the melody its depth and resonance. Eastern wisdom has long understood what Western thought is only beginning to grasp, that opposites are not in conflict, but in dance. Light and darkness, sound and silence, birth and death, these are not antagonistic forces, but complementary aspects of a single reality. You cannot have one without the other, just as you cannot have the peak of a wave without its trough. Death is not the opposite of life any more than night is the opposite of day. They are phases of the same cycle, different movements in the same cosmic dance. To rage against death is to rage against half of existence, to demand that there be peaks without valleys, waves without troughs, music without silence. This perspective transforms our relationship with mortality from resistance to participation. We stop seeing ourselves as separate beings fighting against a hostile universe and begin to experience ourselves as expressions of the universe exploring itself. Death becomes not a tragic ending but a natural transformation, like water becoming vapor or caterpillar becoming butterfly. But this understanding cannot be reached through mere intellectual comprehension. It must be felt, lived, embodied. It emerges not from thinking our way out of the human condition, but from thinking our way into it so completely that we discover our true nature. Here is one of the great paradoxes. The more we accept death, the more alive we become. When we stop running from mortality, we discover immortality, not as endless duration, but as the eternal present moment that never actually dies, because it is always being reborn. Every moment contains within it both death and birth. This breath ends, so the next can begin. This word dissolves, so the next can be spoken. This thought fades, so consciousness can remain fresh and clear. We are dying and being born continuously, and when we align ourselves with this rhythm rather than fighting it, we discover a peace that surpasses understanding. The present moment is the only place where life actually happens, yet it is also the most impermanent thing imaginable, always passing away, never to return in exactly the same form. Learning to rest in this passing moment, to find stability in instability itself, is the key to living fully while dying gracefully. This is why meditation traditions often encourage contemplation of death, not to become morbid, but to become vividly alive to what is here now. When we truly understand that this moment is all we have and all we ever have, attention becomes naturally focused, priorities naturally clarify, and life naturally intensifies. When we make peace with our own mortality, we give others permission to do the same. Our acceptance becomes a gift to those around us, a demonstration that it is possible to live joyfully while dying honestly. We stop participating in the collective denial that keeps everyone trapped in anxiety and start modeling a different way of being human. This doesn't mean we become careless about life or passive about its challenges, quite the opposite. When we are no longer exhausting ourselves fighting against reality, we have tremendous energy available for engaging with reality skillfully and lovingly. We can commit fully to our relationships, our work, our dreams, not because we think they will last forever, but because they matter now. The acceptance of death is ultimately the acceptance of life on life's own terms. It is the recognition that we are participants in something far larger and more beautiful than our individual existence, and that our mortality does not diminish our significance, but defines it. We matter precisely because we are temporary, precious, precisely because we are fragile. Perhaps the deepest teaching about death is that it reveals the fundamental uncertainty at the heart of existence. We do not know when it will come, how it will come, or what, if anything, comes after. This uncertainty is not a bug in the system, it is the system. Uncertainty is the space in which life happens. the opening through which surprise and wonder enter our experience. Our culture teaches us to fear uncertainty, to seek security and predictability above all else. But what if uncertainty is not the problem to be solved, but the mystery to be lived? What if the unknown is not threat, but invitation? What if death is not ending, but opening? Living with uncertainty requires a different kind of courage than we typically cultivate. Not the courage to fight against what we cannot change, but the courage to remain open to what we cannot know. It's the courage to love fully, while knowing we will lose what we love, to invest deeply while knowing all investments are temporary, to create meaningfully while knowing all creations will eventually dissolve. This courage is not about being brave in the face of death. It is about being alive in the face of uncertainty. It is about finding our footing, not on solid ground that doesn't exist, but in the dance itself. Death, then, is perhaps the greatest teacher we will ever encounter, though it is a teacher we spend most of our lives trying to avoid. It teaches us what matters and what doesn't, what lasts and what passes away, what we can control and what we must surrender to. It teaches us to love more fully, live more vividly, and hold more lightly. Most importantly, it teaches us humility, the humility to recognize that we are part of something immeasurably larger than ourselves, and that our individual existence, however precious, is just one note in an infinite symphony. This humility is not degrading but liberating, not diminishing but enlarging. When we finally stop denying death and begin learning from it instead, we discover that it has been trying to teach us how to live all along, not how to live forever, but how to live fully, not how to avoid ending, but how to embrace beginning, not how to escape change, but how to dance with it. The truth we keep denying is not just that we will die, but that in accepting this fact completely, we find the key to being truly alive. In surrendering our impossible demand for permanence, we discover the eternal present. In releasing our grip on what we cannot keep, we open our hands to receive what is always being offered. Death is not the opposite of life. It is life's deepest secret, its final revelation, its ultimate gift. And until we stop denying this truth, we will never fully receive what life is trying to give us. So perhaps today, instead of running from the reality of mortality, we might turn toward it with curiosity rather than terror. We might ask not, how can I avoid death, but how can I live so fully that death, when it comes, finds me complete? Not, how can I make this last forever, but how can I love this so deeply that forever becomes irrelevant? These are not questions to be answered once and filed away, but questions to be lived with, danced with, breathed with. They are invitations into a different way of being human, one that includes death not as enemy, but as advisor, not as ending, but as doorway into deeper mystery. The only truth we keep denying is also the only truth that can set us free. In accepting our mortality, we discover our true immortality, not as endless duration, but as endless presence, not as permanent existence, but as eternal now. If this exploration has touched something within you, if these reflections have opened a space for your own contemplation of life's deepest mysteries, I invite you to join our community of fellow travelers on this path of awakening. Subscribe to Alan Watts Reflections, and let us continue this journey together, exploring the profound questions that make us human and discovering the wisdom that emerges when we have the courage to face reality with open hearts and curious minds.